Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich is Robert Blanton. Robert is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, co-founder and CEO of Warfighter Made, and a 2017 Ormhoff Impact Award Voters' Choice recipient. Robert Blanton, Rob. You go by Rob, correct?
I go by Rob.
Okay, Rob, so good to have you on this podcast. I'm looking forward to finding out more about your incredible life, but also about Warfighter Made and what the great work that you do there.
Super excited to tell you.
All right, so let's get started with the basic, easiest question, at least for me to ask. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Santa Rosa, California, up there in Northern California. And I was there until I was 18. Then I joined the Marine Corps, and that started a whole nother adventure for me.
Those early years of growing up, were you in town or were you suburbia?
In town. Anyone who knows Santa Rosa, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's you're not too far away from some excellent riding areas, like Cow Mountain and so on and so forth. And I did grow up riding dirt bikes. My father was a mechanic, so used to trade a lot of work for bikes as I was growing up. And so.
And what kind of things did your family do? Did you hunt and fish and?
No, none of that.
No?
More of a city kid. I did grow up riding dirt bikes. Unfortunately, my parents separated when I was pretty young, but that gave me an awesome opportunity to be raised by both sets of my grandparents. Unfortunately, my mother was a drug addict and really drove a wedge in between her and my dad. And my dad wasn't a saint, but he was trying to get clean. And for me as a kid, it just, unfortunately, my mom couldn't do it, and it eventually killed her later in my life. But it was kind of one of those old sayings, you got 2 twin brothers that were the kids of an alcoholic, and one brother was super successful and never drank in his life. And when asked why, he said, because my father was an alcoholic. And then the other brother was a massive alcoholic, failed at everything, and so on and so forth. And when asked why, he said, because my father was an alcoholic. So, I surrounded myself with good people growing up, really good friends that weren't into that quote unquote party lifestyle. And, just kind of grew up normal, riding dirt bikes, riding skateboards, riding BMX bikes. And then joined the Marine Corps.
So when you're going through school, um, you were with your grandparents at that point, or
Off and on. I mean, technically, I was living with my mom,
okay,
but because of her issues, I was quite literally on my own.
right,
Um, and but I did spend a a lot of time with both sets of my grandparents, which I always attributed. It was super cool because on the political spectrum, both sets of my grandparents were on opposite ends, and so I kind of grew up hearing, both sides, and that really helped me kind of form my political opinions as time went on. Um, but one set of grandparents were teenagers during the Great Depression, and I learned all about work ethic and making it, just making it happen no matter what, from them. And then my other grandparents were my grandfather was a hardworking blue collar guy, and my grandmother was a homemaker. So I got a lot of great memories from both of them. Just really impacting my life, and kind of pushed me to want to do more. And um, you know, I also had to grow up pretty fast. So
right. I've over the years, especially when I was growing up, I noticed that a lot with split families. That that the kids that went through that either came out super strong or pretty messed up, and sometimes it was both inside a family.
right,
Where an older sibling may be you know off the rails, and the younger sibling, or vice versa, is focused.
driven,
Yeah, and
right,
it always amazes me. Is one of the things I've learned is that as a parent, you can try to do all the right things, but a child is going to be their own person as they develop. You can guide them down the right path, give them all the things that they want, that they need to be successful, and they may go a different route. And then
absolutely,
you can have a child that is maybe forgotten, and that child ends up being the one that's driven. So
right,
it's the personality of the person that and it's a lot of environmental stuff as well. The but it's they're still, everybody's their own person. So congrats
absolutely.
on getting through, and being the strong person you are.
I appreciate it. Well, they always say, and I teach, adversity builds mental toughness. So, I went through some adversities early on in my life, and, not knowing that they were adversities, it was just life. And I came out on this side so far a far better person for it.
Right. Yep. And so when you were going through school, were you studious? Were you
No,
did
I was horrible.
you were horrible?
I,
Okay.
yeah, I was, in elementary school, I was always on detention. I was suspended a whole bunch of times. Um, and then I got to junior high school, and I was getting a little bit better, but I was still getting detentions and Saturday schools, and I don't think I ever got suspended, but high school I never really got in trouble. But I was like the best I ever had grades was playing football, because you had to have a 2.0 to be on the team, and you had to have a 2.5 to play. So as soon as football season was over, I mean, I graduated high school with I think it was a 1.9 GPA. So when I tell my kids that, I got two adult kids now, and when I used to tell my kids that when they were growing up, like, um, they're like, what do you mean a 1.9? The lowest grade you can even get is a C, or, you fail an F. And I was like, no, back then they had D's and I had a whole bunch of them.
Was there any, besides football, was there anything in school that did interest you?
Yeah, girls, like a lot. So
let's see,
which,
girls, motorcycles, skateboards. Yeah, I get it.
yeah, which that ended up, railroading my football career. But once I got a car, then my focus was hanging out with friends and so on and so forth. So
right, yeah. So that you say that it ruined your career, was your football career? Was that the girls or the motorcycles?
The girls.
The girls. Okay.
The girls. Yeah.
Your
yeah.
interest waned in football.
I had other focuses at that time. Let's
right.
put it that way.
Okay. And Santa Rosa is a pretty nice area. I grew up just south of San Francisco on the peninsula, but used to coach my son against some of the Santa Rosa youth football teams when we lived in Napa. So
nice.
We played some games in that area. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
So then you get through high school with your 1.9 GPA, and you decide to join the Marine Corps right away?
No, I was a junior. In high school, and this will tell you how great of a student I was. I was a junior in high school, and I was sitting in an 8th grade level math class, which, if I remember correctly, I never passed that class. But we were sitting in there, and this was a classroom that didn't have desks. We all sat at a round table. And I was actually in there with a couple seniors, and all of us older people were sitting at the same table, and one of my best friends wasn't there. And, I'm that guy. It's like, listen, bro, if you're cutting class, let me know, because I'm cutting with you. And now I'm a little upset because I'm sitting in this class, without him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, and then I was thinking, I was like, man, I haven't seen him all day today, or I hadn't seen him yet. And later on in the class, he comes walking in, and I'm like, bro, where were you at? And he's like, I just joined the Marine Corps. And at that time, my father, I was born in 1974. My old man was 19 at the time. So, he wasn't really old enough to get drafted for Vietnam or anything like that. So he never joined the military.
Yeah, he was right on that outer edge.
Right. Yeah. And so both sets of my grandparents both served. My maternal grandparents, he served during World War II, but never went overseas. And my maternal grandfather served in Korea as a cook. So I kind of had their influences. But, as far as I was concerned at the time, a Marine was just another name for an Army guy. I just didn't know. And, being the brother that he was, he obviously gave my name to the recruiter, and the recruiter started blowing us up. There was 5 of us that were kind of always hanging out, and slowly but surely, like, everybody started joining, and I started doing some soul searching, and I was just kind of like, okay, like, what am I going to do with my life? I know I'm definitely not going on to college, or Santa Rosa has a really good JC. I know I'm not doing that. I think everybody kind of expects me to go work for my grandfather, which I don't necessarily want to do. So I was just like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to join the Marines and see what this is all about. So then the great story about all this is 5 of us joined. All 5 of us eventually became Marines, but we were all supposed to be on the buddy program. And when it came down to leave on our original date, there's only 2 of us left. Everyone else eventually became a Marine, but there was only 2 of us left that was leaving on our original date. And when you are going through MEPS. We went through Oakland. When we were going through MEPS, they're making a big deal about this moment of truth thing. And the moment of truth is you go in and you get an opportunity to admit to anything that's going to get you in trouble when you leave for boot camp. And we were leaving for boot camp literally that night. And there was some military member standing out front. And he's like, oh, yeah, how many of you here are on the buddy program? And there's a handful of us with our hands up in the air. He's like, yeah, one of you guys is going to get screwed. During the moment of truth, your buddy's going to admit to something. He's going to get sent home and you're going to be all by yourself, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. Man, I walk into that moment of truth. I don't say anything. I swear in and I walk out and there's my boy, the first one to join, sitting on what they called the bench of woe. And I walk up to him and I'm like, bro, what's going on? He's like, hey, man, the other night I was over at a friend's house. We were kind of partying a little bit. And I got high and they're sending me home. I got to do another drug waiver. I'm not leaving for another 2 weeks. So I'm like, man, here I am. I am the proverbial. If your friend jumps off a bridge, will you? Yeah, 4 of my friends jumped off a bridge. So I joined them. And now I'm the only one going on our, original ship date. And, that was an eye opener, going off the boot camp, especially doing it alone. But I had a couple buddies that, out of the 5 of us, 2 ended up going together, and they didn't have a very successful, career. And they basically blamed it on never really growing up because they had each other to constantly fall back on. And so, but eventually they got separated from the military. They never finished their time. And so I was very fortunate. And then out of the 5 of us, only 2 of us completed our 4-year enlistment. And I was the only one that continued on and eventually retired.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. I've heard that kind of story before, the buddy system. My dad and his best friend, I considered him my uncle, did that, but that was a different time with them. It was, back in the 50s. And they were both mechanics, machinists, and boot was a lot different. Probably Army too. So,
Right.
That probably made a difference. But when you talked about your grandfather, people thought you were going to work with him. What kind of work did he do?
He had a very successful, basically it was what would be considered like an HVAC company today, but it was industrial. So at the time, they specialized in the old industrial heating boilers.
Okay.
And that was kind of his forte, and that's what started the business. But then they expanded into like massive sheet metal ducting and still heating and cooling and stuff like that on a much bigger level.
Okay. All right. And you said that your dad was 19 in 74, and I understand that time period because at that time I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't too far behind your dad there at that time.
Yeah.
But that was kind of a crazy time.
Yeah. Well, my old man turned 19 in September, and I was born in December. So, yeah,
like I said, that was kind of a crazy time.
And then I had my son when I was 19. I'm 50 now, and thankfully, my son, who's 30, getting ready to turn 31, broke that cycle. So,
good. Okay.
But he doesn't. But he still doesn't have any kids, which actually irritates the crap out of my wife and I.
Oh, it'll happen more than likely at some point. So
and we're putting more faith in our daughter.
Oh,
now,
there you
who's
go.
27,
Okay.
Who's 27.
We have a lot of similarities. The daughter and son and kids and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's I'm just that generation ahead of you there. That's all.
Yeah.
And I didn't do the military because at my time, it was just at the end of the Vietnam conflict and the draft ended in 73, and I graduated high school in 76, and it was like, okay, well, the next thing is to college, because there was no push, or there was no thought of even going into the military at that time, even though my dad had served, like I said, and
Right.
was proud of that fact. So it's
that was
interesting how
definitely
time does that.
it was definitely a different time in the 70s, and it's also why Warfighter Made. I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. It's also why Warfighter Made. I mean, we kind of have a standing order. No matter what you're doing, if you see somebody walking by with a Vietnam veteran hat on, you stop what you're doing, and you go up and you shake that veteran's hand, and welcome them home. I usually tell them thank you for leading the way, and depending on how long that conversation lasts, then I always tell them too that it's now my generation of warfighters' responsibility to ensure that the next generation of warfighter is treated the same way that we were. There can never be another Vietnam era veteran, the way they were treated and everything.
Right.
We can't allow that to happen again. So can't let history repeat itself like that.
Yeah, they got a pretty raw deal.
They did, absolutely, 100%.
And it had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with those individuals.
No, and it's why we love. I mean, we love we love catering to Vietnam vets at Warfighter Made. But we'll get to that when that time comes.
Okay. So you join the Marine Corps. You get through boot, and what was your
what was my MOS, my job,
my
military occupational specialty? Well, so let's just say, that 1.9 coming out of high school did me zero favors. I went and took the ASVAB, which is the test that everybody who wants to join the military has to take. And prior to that, I had been dealing with the recruiter, and I was really interested in any jobs that had to do with driving. I loved driving. And, little did I know at the time, they were just going to make me a motor T operator, which, is not the most glamorous job in the world. But so I had all these jobs kind of like picked out that I wanted to do. And I went and took the ASVAB and came back, and my recruiter got the test scores. And he's like, hey, man, I got some good news and I got some bad news. The good news is I can make you a Marine. The bad news is you don't qualify with these test scores
for anything,
for any of these jobs. I mean, I'm like, I don't even qualify to drive anything. And he's just like, no, let's just say you're lucky I can make you a Marine.
Wow.
So I had to do what's called open contract. And what open contract is, it's basically the needs of the Marine Corps. When you finish boot camp and then you go on to your next school, which is called Marine Combat Training, the Marine Corps is looking at their needs, and you could become anything from, if they need cooks or drivers or infantrymen, whatever they need that's what you're going to become. But I actually had a really good recruiter, and he's a really good guy. I was a little overweight, not bad, but a little overweight. And so he used to spend some time with me. We used to go mountain bike riding everywhere in Santa Rosa, and we'd go for jogs and stuff like that. So, he took care of me, and he's like, listen, there's going to be an opportunity when you first check into this your next school called MCT, Marine Combat Training. They're probably going to pull everybody who is open contract into a room. It was an old military Quonset hut, and they're going to offer you a job. And I suggest whatever it is, you take it, because you're gonna, get probably something you don't want. So they brought us all into that room, and it just so happened that the one job that they were offering was infantry, and I jumped on it and took it, and that started my infantry career, which I only did for a year and a half, and then I immediately went to I kind of fast tracked in a sense. And I immediately went to Force Recon, which is special operations for the Marine Corps. And I made a career, 19 of my 21 years, I was in Force Recon, either operating as a Force Reconnaissance Marine or doing jobs making Force Reconnaissance Marines.
Very good. Very good. So you excelled.
I excelled. I made a lot of mistakes, learned from those mistakes, and just continued to push forward.
Perfect. And where were you stationed?
Uh, for the I did 18 years on Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
So I joined in '93. Right after I graduated high school. I mean, we graduated in June, and July I was on the infamous yellow footprints in Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. I was in 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines on Camp Pendleton. That was my infantry unit. I went to Somalia with them almost right after Black Hawk Down had happened. And that was kind of my first combat deployment. And then I took the Force Recon in doc, which was kind of like the in test. I ended up taking that thing twice and made it my second time, and then just had an awesome career. The average Marine spends 2 to 3 years at a unit. Force Recon had a requirement of 5 years because they were trying to they put a lot of money into your training and your schooling and so on and so forth, and they were trying to get at least 2 deployments out of you. And I ended up spending just shy of 10 years there, which is sort of unheard of in for military units. And I enjoyed every minute that I was operating there. And then I went on to schools that basically take Force Reconnaissance Marines and give them the special skills that they need to go and do deployments and stuff like that, like close quarters battle training, urban sniper, recon and surveillance, and stuff like that.
And then you'd mentioned, we're going to jump back a little bit. You'd mentioned that that when you got a car, what was that first car?
My first car that I actually had registered. My mom had a bunch of boyfriends, and they were always trying to be my friend or something like that. So one of her boyfriends gave me a 1969 Opel Kadett Rally, but that was never registered to me. And a matter of fact, me and a couple friends cut school one day when it was raining in NorCal. And I grew up by the Sonoma County fairgrounds. And so they had that's where I learned how to ride dirt bikes, and they just had big open dirt fields, which they used for parking lots. So we took that Opel Kadett out there. I'm like 14, don't have a driver's license. And we're out there just spinning donuts like crazy. And I eventually get a flat tire. So go to change the flat tire, and the jack slips off of the rear frame rail and goes right through the gas tank.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I was like, well, it was fun. See you later. And left that car there, and it ended up, getting impounded. And then a couple years later, I was doing the junkyard crawls, and found that car sitting out there, and it been parted out and everything. But the first car that was registered to me was a 1986 Dodge Charger Shelby edition, which had the, it was a manual. It had the little 2.2 liter turbo motor in it. And my dad, I grew up drag racing with my dad at Sears Point, now called Sonoma Raceway, I believe.
Right.
And he had built a V8 Vega, and that thing ran high 11s. And I just remember being like 4 years old with a helmet and a lap belt on, sitting in his passenger seat, looking like the great Gazoo there. And I couldn't see over the dash. I couldn't see over the door sill. But I just remember the tree operator, walking up and like tapping on the glass to get me to look at him to make sure my chin strap was fastened and to make sure that my seatbelt was on. And then, then my dad, like I said, that thing ran high 11s. And, so I was a street racer growing up with that little 4-cylinder turbo, just being a menace to basically everybody around me. I was a horrible, horrible person when it came to just, I look back on some of the things that I did, and I would kick the crap out of my son if he ever did any of that stuff. But, when you grow up in the same, area, you just kind of feel like you own it. And, I was not a very good citizen back then with that car.
All right. So we'll jump back into the into your military. And what part of all of that were the best memories out of?
Oh man, the best memories were really the worst stories, just the overcoming adversity and just the times you don't think you just never see the light at the end of the tunnel, and some of these missions you're on, whether they're training or actual combat missions. But it always has to do with the guys. When you Force Recon in the 90s and mid 2000s was the pinnacle of the Marine Corps. And, I'm at that because I just turned 50. I'm kind of at that age now where I'm really reflecting on a lot of the things that I've done. And, I look in the mirror and I'm like, who the hell were you? Where did that come from? And just super proud of that stuff and whatnot. And the life that my wife was also a Marine. I did 21 years. She did 22 years. We met at a school in the Marine Corps called Corporal's Course, which is a leadership school for basically junior leaders. And I met and married her ass in 5 months. And, just all of a sudden I just realized, man, I got something good here. I'm locking this down. And 30 some odd years later, here we are. So a lot of things with her were great memories. Just my career. I ended up getting, as a family, we got stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and I was pissed when it happened. And it turned out to be one of the best 3 years of my life. I had a really good brother that I served with that followed me over there with his wife. And I had a really good brother that was already stationed there. And it was an amazing opportunity. And the training I did, and then I volunteered to go up to a unit called 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion. Specifically, I was a pretty senior Marine at this point, and I volunteered to go up there specifically to take a platoon of young reconnaissance Marines to Iraq, which I had already been to. That would have been my third. I was getting ready to take these guys on my third tour to Iraq, and we had I had an excellent platoon. We had a good deployment. Unfortunately, we got in a pretty massive firefight, and I lost a Marine during that time. But I always say, you know, I didn't lose him to stupidity. I didn't lose him to complacency, and I didn't lose him to I didn't lose him to a lack of training. I simply lost him to the circumstances of the fight. And any one of us, including myself, who would have been in his situation, would have met the same fate. We just didn't know. Basically, the first shot of this ambush that we got caught in took him out. So so that was super tough. But you know, you do understand you're there to do a job. You understand the risks, and you know, so now I just try and live every day to honor him and you know, just be a good person, because he can't be.
Right. That's honorable. So you were awarded the Silver Star.
So I was awarded the Silver Star for that action. It's our nation's third highest award for valor, below the Medal of Honor and what's called the Cross. For us Marines, it'd be called the Navy Cross. And there's only 150 of us in the Marine Corps since 9/11/2001 who've been awarded that award.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty heavy.
It's funny. A lot of people don't even know what it is. Yeah, it's, you know, it's usually when it comes up or somebody says something and they're like, "Oh, so is that like the Bronze Star?" And I'm like, yeah, it's like the bronze. It's not even close to the Bronze Star, but yeah.
Right. It's hard to explain if somebody doesn't have, you know, any semblance of understanding of the military.
And you know, and then obviously just being humble about it and whatnot, then
Right.
it gets hard to try and explain and whatnot. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk now about, I mean, we've got a good foundation on where you started and what you became. You in 2012, you and a couple others started Warfighter. Is that correct?
that's correct. And actually, what kind of led to that, which is a huge part of my story that I got to get out there,
Absolutely.
is, you know, veterans in active duty military, we have an uncommonly high suicide rate, unfortunately. And after being awarded the Silver Star, I was starting to have a lot of issues with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. Also in that ambush, me and a brother got blown up in a vehicle by a guy wearing a suicide vest. So I was having a lot of problems with post-traumatic stress that was primarily manifesting itself in anger issues. It also didn't help that my wife, as soon as we came back from Okinawa in 2009, she immediately got deployed to Afghanistan. So we're literally just moving back to California. You know, both my kids are teenagers. Both of my kids are going through their teenager stuff. I have undiagnosed post-traumatic stress at this time, traumatic brain injury. And, you know, my wife gets deployed and she's gone for 8 months, I think it was. We've just bought a brand new house. You know, they literally brought all of our household goods to us, and we stacked it in a room in the house, and the wife's gone. So now I'm a Marine. I'm still working my job. I'm a dad. I'm trying to take care of my kids, you know, doing all their sports events, trying to help them with their things. Also just letting them trying to let them to be teenagers. I'm trying to handle all the cooking, the cleaning, paying the bills, all the stuff that my wife as a active duty Marine could just crush. And I was struggling big time. And it didn't help that I was also self-medicating with alcohol, drinking my face off. But finally, a brother of mine, basically a peer, someone who I had grown up with in the reconnaissance community with, who he and I, with our platoon, actually inserted into Iraq before the ground war started. Came up to me and basically called me out, just like, I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what you're doing. But you need to fix yourself because you're getting ready to get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. And so that kind of started my journey to seek help through the military, which unfortunately wasn't a very good journey for me, because I was a really senior Marine. But I was nowhere near, I still had 5 years until I can retire. But some of the people that I was talking to were looking at me with the rank that I had on my collar, thinking that I'm getting ready to retire and I'm trying to pad my books, my medical records. And, it was a tough go. And then when I finally got into a position where I was getting some help, the very first thing they want to do is force you to take meds. And I wasn't about that. Tell me what's wrong with me so I can work through it and fix myself. And, but part of my post-traumatic stress and my traumatic brain injury, I wasn't sleeping very well. And, I'd go for weeks sleeping 2 hours a night, fragmented. And it finally took a toll on me. And one night I wake up and I'm staring in the darkness and I'm like, I'm a massive failure. My wife would be so much better off without me. I'm ruining my relationship with my kids. They would be so much better off without me. And I was going to kill myself. And fortunately, my wife woke up, stopped me, made me realize that my thought process was all jacked up, and kind of laid it out for me, made me understand that, my mentality was wrong. And that was the catalyst to start Warfighter Made with two brothers, Brian Meyer, who's a combat wounded explosive ordnance, basically a bomb squad Marine. He's a triple amputee. And our brother Butch Lynch, who, as we love to say, was an old school hot rodder, builder, painter. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020 due to complications from a stroke he had. But that's kind of what started. That's what started Warfighter Made. And the big thing that we were talking about was, listen, I know how you feel. I've been there. I've walked in those boots. Let me show you a different feeling.
Excellent that you were able to take that time when you were way down,
right,
at the lowest, and then create something to bring others that are in that same situation up.
Yeah. So, and then we started Warfighter Made. We were just adapting and customizing vehicles for catastrophically wounded warfighters, basically our brothers and sisters who went overseas and became amputees. We were adapting and customizing their vehicles free of charge is what we were doing. And Butch's daughter had met a guy and he was a fabricator, and his name was Adam Fitza, or is Adam Fitza, who is now he's got Fitza Racing, and he's part of the OTSFF. I hope I said that right. 6100 spec trophy truck. and he was helping us create some of these projects. And he comes to me one day and he's like, "Hey, I also manage a Lucas Oil regional team. My boss has a Predator desert buggy, and it's got a passenger seat. It's short course. Why don't we start taking vets and putting them in as passengers?" And so we started doing that, and that was kind of the start of what we were referring to as adrenaline therapy. And started meeting a whole bunch of short course racers and so on and so forth. And then we got invited to the Mint 400 by the same guy, Bill Belansky, who also unfortunately has passed away. And Bill had a heavy metal truck that he was racing that Adam was building and in charge of. And while we were there, a lot of the short course racers were also there, and the Merrill brothers from UTV Wolfpack introduced us to Polaris Razor, and it was literally like a 5-minute conversation. And it happened to be a gentleman by the name of Jason DeFucia, who was one of the marketing managers for Polaris Razor. He's no longer there, but and Jason, after basically the Merrill brothers gave him kind of the pitch of who I was and what we do at Warfighter Made, Jason's like, "Okay, cool, yeah, okay. So if I gave you 2 Polaris Razors, what are you going to do with them?" And I was like, literally pulled something out of my butt. I was just like, "Oh, well, we're going to start taking vets, and we're going to put them behind the wheel, and we're going to call it recreational therapy and just have a lot of fun." And he's like, all right, excellent. Yeah, okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hire Joey D at UTV Underground and the Martelli brothers at Mad Media, and we're going to go ahead and shoot a whole video about this, and then we're going to tie it to a call to action that if this video gets 100,000 views in 24 hours, we're going to give you 2 more machines. Well, that was 2014, and Polaris Razor has been one of our biggest sponsors still to this day. And it's just been a wild ride with them and all the things that we've done over the years. So, I mean, now we've built almost 30 vehicles for catastrophically wounded warfighters, to include motorcycles, trucks, a lot of Polaris products, and just we're all volunteer here. When I retired from when I retired from the Marines in 2014, I immediately became a full-time volunteer for the organization. I don't work any other jobs. This is it. This is what I love doing. My right-hand man, Danny Navoa, has been with me since 2016. He's in the same boat. He's a full-time volunteer. He's our lead builder now. He loves it so much that, he specifically used his GI Bill to go to the fab school and just to hone his skills. And with him, he and I have done some incredible things, to include winning the Mint 400 in the vintage military class 5 times in a row.
Nice. Very nice. And you guys just, I met you personally just this last weekend at the Mint 400, and it was great to do that and to see, the athletes. I'm going to, there's no doubt in my mind they're athletes that you had out there. One of the motorcycle riders really impressed me. He's very focused. I don't remember his name, but he was riding one of the motorcycles and was a double amputee.
Double leg amputee, yeah. Jesse Williamson, Jesse Williamson, just he was like 19 when he was wounded and lost. He was what's called a limb salvage, which they're trying to save the lower limbs for a while, and then eventually they're like, your quality of life would probably be so much better without these. So, yeah, but we actually had 3 riders. I was trying to get our motorcycle number to be, our moto team number to be 324. 3 guys, 2 legs, 4 prosthetics, because they only had 2 good legs between them. And then one of the riders, Mitch, who's a combat wounded single leg amputee above the knee, left foot. Unfortunately, he was having an issue with his prosthetic fitting properly. And so he decided just to let Jesse and Dan Stoner, who is a single leg amputee Marine, let those 2 rip it out on the course. And the boys got the finish, which is exactly what we're looking for. You know, just want to get these guys out there and let them have fun and get that finish. And then we also had Tim Hall of Tim Hall Racing, who Tim's a soldier. He's a combat wounded double leg amputee. We built him a Razor year. We met him at the Mint 400, surprised him with a Razor, and then built that thing out with Seth Quintero. Seth Quintero's uncle it had a fab shop called King Taro Motorsports, and so he helped us build Tim's machine specifically for Tim's injuries. So everything on that Polaris Razor was basically designed for Tim to be able to get out if he was ever in an accident, or, you know, no matter what attitude the vehicle was in. And it was also designed for Tim as a double leg amputee to be able to work on his own vehicle if he had to do a race course repair or something like that. So Tim has since donated that machine back to us because he went over to the dark side to another UTV brand and built his own machine. But he still reps Warfighter Made loud and proud. And he finished. So, which was awesome because him and his wife were married on the Mint 400 stage last year. So it was literally their 1 year anniversary, and he got that finish, which we all know is what it's all about.
Right. That's so cool. So then, how many, you said you'd done how many vehicles so far?
We got to be close to 30 now.
30 now. Okay.
Yeah.
And how are you able to do those vehicles? Are you taking donations or how do things work?
Yeah, donations. We're very fortunate. Again, through the Lucas Oil Off-Road Series, we met a guy who has always, loved what we do and not a vet himself, but has a family foundation that every year they donate money to us, a very large sum of money that we use to create these projects. Wire Care is a big sponsor of ours, financial and product. PRP is a big sponsor of ours. Aaron, I know you did a podcast with him. Aaron's actually on our board, and so is Gary Hogley. And a great story about Gary real fast is in the 90s at First Force, we had Cheneth light strike vehicles, the 3-seat doom buggies, right?
Right.
The DR3s, we all called them Chenoweths because we didn't know any better. Matter of fact, I saw Lynn at the NORA a couple years ago, and I was like, Lynn, I got to ask you a question. How do you pronounce your last name? And he's like, it's Cheneth, like Kenneth. And I was like, son of a bitch, I've been saying it wrong for like 30 years now. So, but when we had those things, they weren't really a DoD, Department of Defense item. So the motor T mechanics that worked on our Humvees and our 5 tons and all that stuff didn't really have the knowledge base to work on those. So my unit went out in town and basically hired B&R Buggy to maintain, give driving classes. So while Gary and I never crossed paths on what we call the compound at First Force, we were definitely there at the exact same time. We know all the exact same people, and here we are 30 years later, and Gary's also a board member for us. And he was instrumental in us getting one of the Cheneth Light Strike vehicles that First Force Reconnaissance Company had. And that is our Mexican 1000 race vehicle.
Nice.
So,
and then Mike is also on the board, right?
Yeah. So Admiral Mike is our chairman. We all came together. Basically, Gary, Admiral Mike, and myself came together over, I'll just say Danny got in a little bit of trouble due to, again, some issues with post-traumatic stress and whatnot. And so we all came together, not really knowing one another at the time, to provide assistance to Danny, and is so that's how we all met. And so we were already doing short course races. We had somebody donate a mini open truck to us, a Ford Ranger. And so we were taking that at the regional series at Lucas Oil, and we were putting different vets behind the wheel, to include George Earl, who was a Vietnam veteran, 3 Purple Hearts, 3 Bronze Stars, well known in the Baja world for motorcycle racing and 9 cars. But we got him, behind the wheel of we call it the Danger Ranger, and so he was able to. Actually, he put our Danger Ranger in the grave. He was going around a corner and a leaf spring bolt broke and dug the spring into the track, and it flipped him. And the team was able to get the truck running, and he was able to race the next day, but the damage was done. And then we had John and Larry, who are 2 Vietnam vets. We had them race with us. 78 years old, these 2 guys are. They kind of grew up together, joined the Air Force together, and from Texas. And we met them we pulled them out of a wash during the Mexican 1000. And we just became fast friends after that. So we had them come out last year to the Mint 400, and they drove Beefy, our Humvee, for us. And so it's kind of our passion to give back to Vietnam vets. We've even had Bob Bauer came out to one of our events. He, didn't want to drive, but man, he loved buckling the vets in and just swapping, Bob, just swapping stories and just having a good time. So, it's a lot of people don't know that Bob, was in the Air Force during Vietnam, and we like to make sure that people know that, especially our legends in off-road that are also veterans. A lot of people don't know Mike Perlman of Nora, is an Army vet. And because it's just, for whatever reason, that era, guys just don't talk about it. And now we love letting them know and showing them appreciation.
That's awesome. Yeah, Baja Bob Bauer is a special guy. That's for sure.
Without a doubt.
And yeah, it was really good seeing him this last weekend too.
Yeah.
So then, how can people and businesses that listen to this podcast help Warfighter?
Well, we want to build relationships. It's easy for people just to write a a couple $100 check and like, hey, go forth and do good things. But we really want to spend some time with them and get them to see what it is that we're really doing and realize that, I got a dedicated crew of volunteers here, and the overwhelming majority of us are veterans, and we're full-time, and Warfighter Made only has one contracted employee, and we just hired her a few years ago. We're on our 12th year now, 13th year. And, but to answer your question, they can look us up on the web at warfightermade.org. And they can also look at our social medias to get a feel for who we are and what we do, at Warfighter Made on Instagram and Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We're here in Temecula, California is where we're headquartered out of. And if we're here basically Monday through Friday and select Saturdays, our business hours say 10 to 4. But that's only because we're mostly volunteers. But, I normally get here at 9 and we normally leave at after 5 or so. So we love people when they stop by and hang out and so on and so forth. So
Excellent. And is there anything else that I've missed that you would like to discuss?
Yeah, our Mint 400 program and our NORA program is we take vets, and we basically put them behind the wheel of our vintage military vehicles. So Flyer 22 that has 5-peated, the Mint 400. We had 5 different vets, including myself and Danny. We had 5 different vets drive. We had 6 different vets, I believe, that drove Beefy, our Humvee. Tim Hall in his personal UTV rotated a couple vets through the steering wheel. And then, of course, our moto team had 3 vets that 2 raced. Oh, and I got to also say, another nonprofit, Vets, you can find them online, Vets in Motorsports. They provided pit support for us on Saturday. John McMurrin, one of the founders of that, used to work or used to help us out, volunteer here, and he started that organization pretty much to help veterans who are trying to get competitive racing programs going. And right now they're really big for KOH, King of the Hammers. So if any vets are listening to this and you have a competitive off-road program and a little bit of pit support would help you guys out, definitely look up Vets in Motorsports on social media. And then, of course, he enlisted the help of Tim Morton in Baja Bound Moto to support our team on Saturday, which was super awesome for us. So, and then for any vets that are listening, if you're not into off-road, which I don't know why you'd be listening to this podcast if you weren't into off-road, but, we also work with a whole host of other nonprofits because we know that every vet that walks through our doors isn't going to be 100% into what it is that we're providing. But if they're walking through our doors, it's telling me that they're looking for something different. So, we work with all kinds of nonprofits, from hunting and fishing to scuba diving to horse therapies. There's another nonprofit, and don't get these confused, Vet Motorsports, Veteran Empowerment Through Motorsports. They're the on-road people to what Warfighter Made is off-road. So there's just all kinds out there. So if anybody's listening and they know a veteran that might, could benefit from something, have them reach out to us, and we're here for vets, 100%.
That's excellent. And I want to say, Rob, thank you so much for sharing your life and what you're doing. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that I got a chance to meet you, and I want to come down to Temecula and hang out and see what more about what you guys are about. So expect me to come wandering in someday. And
I'll leave the door open.
Perfect. And I want to say thank you so much for spending the time with us. And I want to let everybody know that that's listening to this that, please reach out to Rob Blanton at Warfighter Made, and especially if you're a vet or you want to help the vets, realize a dream. So please, help out.
Yep. If personal contact, robert@warfightermade.org.
Perfect. I appreciate your time today, Rob, and anything I can do to help you in the future, just let me know.
Big Rich, thanks for having this platform for people like us to get our stories out.
Absolutely. All right. You take care and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.